Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hello, and welcome back, Woo Crew, to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and today is a solo episode. Before I dive into it, though, I just want to remind you that I am still running my summer healing special for a couple more weeks. Until the end of August, really. And this looks like 30 days of voice note support with 2 remote healings delivered to you bi-weekly during that time. The feedback that I've had so far from all of the women who have jumped in has been really incredible. And I've been really enjoying giving this kind of support in a way that doesn't impinge on your summer plans. So if you're curious, there'll be a link to grab a time to chat about whether it's a right fit for you, or if you know that you want this and you're ready to dive in, there'll be a link to do that as well. Any questions at all, either book a time to chat or come on over to @IamEileenMarch on Instagram and shoot me a message. We can chat. I'll fill you in on all the details. So for this week's episode, I was torn about what I wanted to speak about. However, when it came down to kind of narrowing down the topics that were pulling my attention, I feel like there's some overlap between them. And so I'm going to speak to all of them. And these topics are the experience of awe and wonder, which are similar but different. And then this idea of re-enchantment that I've been dropping into. If you're on my email list or if you're following me on Instagram, you may have seen me chatting about this idea of enchantment or re-enchantment as I wrapped up finishing reading The Enchanted Life by Sharon Blackie. If you've been around here for very long, you'll know how big a fan I am of Sharon Blackie's book, If Women Rose Rooted. And this is a later book of hers that is a little bit more like a how-to manual in some ways. There's a lot of questions for reflection, a lot of exercises in there. Nothing particularly new in terms of ideas that she's conveying. At least it didn't feel new to me, but it really was grounding me in this sense of the importance of re-enchantment, the connection that living in an enchanted world gives us, not only to our bodies, but to each other and to the planet herself. And then this really links in beautifully with the ideas or the experiences of awe and wonder. As with so many emotions, we tend to not pause long enough to notice and experience awe and wonder in our day-to-day lives. Things happen fast. We feel, many of us, maybe not you, I hope. However, if you're here listening to me, you probably experience this to some degree. We often feel like there is just so much on our plates, so much to do, so little time, that old adage or that feeling of wanting to get to a place where we've done all of the things so that we can slow down and notice. And I've spoken to this many times before, but that way of moving in the world, that waiting to be able to rest, to slow down, to notice, to cultivate a sense of joy or wonder at the world around us and our experience of life within it, will never lead to actually being able to experience those things. For many of us, the experiences of awe or wonder happen really easily when we take ourselves out of our normal environments. And so travel becomes an addiction almost for many of us, not only because it's amazing to travel. I'm not dissing it. I'm a huge traveler. It pulls us out of our normal and has us noticing things that we might otherwise not. We specifically seek out natural wonders and human created wonders to visit and see and admire when we're out traveling in ways that we don't tend to at home. Not only that, but the novelty of the language or the food or the architecture or the flora and fauna, the plant life, the topography, the geography of the places we're going. When something is unfamiliar, our brain pays more attention to it. It has to, in a lot of ways, for survival, again, coming back into the neuroscience of it all. And it also is stimulated to want to, from that conscious side of things, the exploration, the soaking it all in. We are called to take photos of things that if we saw the same building perhaps in our own city, we might not even really notice that it existed. So today I'd like to chat a little bit about the importance of cultivating moments of awe and moments of wonder in your day-to-day life. And this is such a foundation of the work that I do with clients. It's part of the reason as well that the containers in which I work one-on-one with clients, with the exception of this summer healing special, tend to be significantly longer. Currently 6 months. I am brewing up a potentially longer container that will dive a little deeper into the wheel of the year and work more closely with that. That's your tease for now. And part of the reason that it's so important to nurture these kinds of practices over a long time is that it's not our habit. Again, our brains are really inclined to take the easy route, and the easy route is falling into the patterns that we've always followed, the habits we've always followed. When you're in your own home, in your own backyard, your brain's thinking about what's for dinner and how to get Susie to tennis practice when it starts 5 minutes after the other kids' piano lessons or what have you. There's a lot more room for us to be really caught in our heads when we're able to move through our environment in a kind of autopilot way that doesn't exist when we're traveling. So bringing some intentional awareness to your normal environments, to the places you find yourself in your day-to-day, your home, your drive to work, if you go into an office, your backyard, if you have one, the tree on your regular dog walk route. All of these things, even though they're right there for you, often pass unnoticed. And so practicing intentionally pausing to notice these elements in your day-to-day is a beautiful way to create bubbles of space and ease in a day that otherwise feels really full. It's a pause. It doesn't have to be any longer than 1 to 3 intentional breaths, but it's also pulling in some of that intentional wonder or amazement. I'm currently taking some additional coaching training, and one of the practices that we're doing regularly in that program is pausing and doing something as simple as running the fingertips of one hand over the fingers and palm of the other hand and feeling all of the nuance and the creases and the sensation that happen just in running one hand over the other and shifting between feeling the fingers moving on the palm, like having the palm be the feeling state, versus feeling what the palm feels like to those other fingers. It's this subtle difference, but it's there and it's amazing. Every time I do it, there's the ability to create a sense of awe or wonder simply by engaging with our own bodies. And so when we can bring this outside our own bodies and start to engage with that same sense of wonder or awe in the elements that surround us, it starts to create this sense of connection, of joy, as I said, ease, this presence, this pause. And awe itself, specifically, there's been lots of studies done around the feeling of awe and its benefits to us. As with so many of these emotions or feeling states or practices that we talk about on this podcast, there's magic in the emotions. There's magic in these practices of pausing to notice. And what we've found, or what researchers have found that's really interesting, is that experiences of awe inspire us. So that's not terribly surprising, but they actually make us more willing to take risks. And so if you've been feeling stuck or stagnant, like you want to make a change in life, but you're unsure how to do it, or it feels really uncomfortable, actively seeking out experiences that foster awe in you. And that could be something visual, an awe-inspiring vista, for instance. It could also be a feat by a person. We know that wonder and awe is inspired by other humans doing incredible things. Throw on a Cirque du Soleil video clip and be awed, be amazed by the things the human body is capable of. Cultivating these awe experiences help us be more uncomfortable with uncertainty. They help us feel more willing to take risks. But not only that, they also create more generosity in us towards others. It's these, if we're going to go into the lingo of the day, it's these high vibrational energetic states, right? And people who feel awe will be more generous to those around them. And so if we start to think about this in terms of our reciprocity with each other and with the more than human world. If you haven't been here for long, you may not have heard me say that term before, but when I say the more than human world, I mean everything. I mean the plants and the animals. I mean the rocks. I mean the bacteria. I mean everything that's not human. And when we think about that generosity that the feelings of awe or wonder can inspire in us, think about how that might change your relationship with not only other humans, giving you more space for compassion, more space to be generous, which of course has a ripple effect when we are able to be unselfishly generous. Obviously we get a thrill from being generous, but if we're feeling in that kind of reserved, restricted state, it's harder to be generous, and we might do something quote unquote generous with an ulterior motive beyond just the feel good for doing something to help someone. But when we can be truly generous, it always comes back in kind, maybe not from that person, but from somewhere, right? There's this ripple effect when we can move with compassion and generosity. Then in addition, in the ways that we might interact with the land, with the animals, with the earth herself, in this spirit of generosity, we're dipping now into the territory of this re-enchantment or enchanting life, again coming into close connection or kinship and feeling awe and wonder for all the more than human creatures, beings, pieces, parts that make up this world we're on, allows us to see perhaps how we really are part of this larger whole. We're not separate from nature. We are of it, and we can give back. We often think of humans as this blight upon the planet, as a species that only takes, consumes. Sometimes, or very frequently in Western culture, we've created this divide where we have human and then we have commodity. And everything that's not human is seen as a potential commodity. What can it do for us? And even those of us who are quite connected to the natural world, often it still is in the sense of what can I get from it? And so we start to think, as we cultivate these feelings and thinking about generosity, is what can I do for the land? And the beauty is, if you are cultivating a relationship with a place, or even just with your house plants. So often consideration is all that's required, or an effort to tread more gently, or perhaps, offering a song or a prayer, or an offering of your own hair to give back, something that's a reciprocal relationship. And I've spoken to this here before, but that sense of being generous to the land too, giving for what is so openly available to us. The focus when we are in those states of awe and wonder really becomes more transcendent. It's away from our kind of myopic box of me, what I'm feeling, what's happening to me, what I need to do next, how other people are treating me, my circumstance. It gets us out of ourselves. And then again, right? So this is taking us into that space where if you're feeling stuck or in rumination, cultivating awe, seeking out experiences that create senses of awe and wonder can really help you shift and feel also less lonely, because you will feel like you are part of something greater. Because awe is at something external to us, we are very rarely awed by our own selves. We can be amazed that we accomplish some pretty cool things. So looking backwards and cultivating a bit of a sense of like, holy crow, yeah, I did some amazing shit in my life. That's great. And it is very true that it's easier to look outside of ourselves and find that awe and wonder and feel that sense of connection again to being part of something so much greater. Sometimes it makes you feel really insignificant when you start to think about like the vastness of the universe and how amazing it is that we even exist here. It used to make me feel really uncomfortable and like, what is the point? Why does it matter? But then there's this beautiful flip side of that, like, oh gosh, the things that really bother me or that I'm super stressed about, they really don't matter. They matter in the now to my physical body here, but often it just gives me this perspective where I recognize that I'm just this small piece of a much, much greater whole. And again, it comes back to that feeling of generosity and of wanting to be a good piece, a kind piece, a compassionate piece, and a good ancestor as well. Before I wrap up, I also want to touch on the word wonder briefly, because it's something that I've been trying to encourage in myself, not just wonder in terms of the way that it's similar to awe, where I can look at a flower and be in wonder of its petals and its the geometric shape of it and the way that it attracts the bees and all of those beautiful pieces of a flower, but also wonder in the way that we say, oh, I wonder what makes a flower yellow, for instance. I have a yellow flower on my desk as I record this, so that's what's coming to mind. I spoke to this recently, either in an email or on Instagram, I don't remember where, but this cultural norm, which is understandable, that we don't wonder very much anymore because we all have a encyclopedia with all of the knowledge collected in all of human history, basically, available at our fingertips. And so if we have a question, we just look it up. Whereas we used to have to sit in wonderment. Some of us would have an encyclopedia collection in our houses, in our homes, that we could go look up answers to if we had questions to which we didn't know the answers. I never did. I don't even know how we got information in my house. and they were static books that had been written. They didn't contain all of the knowledge the way the internet does. And there's this part of me that feels like we've lost something perhaps a little magical in the space of wonderment, in the space of being able to sit and wonder and not have the answer and simply experience and be okay with not knowing. This is a really good practice for our nervous systems, being okay with the unknown. It doesn't feel comfortable. And I think we've gotten less and less okay with it because so much of our world is known. And so can you cultivate a sense of wonder in that sense as well. Can you? I would challenge you this week, and I would love to hear if you do this practice, how it feels or what comes up for you. But I would challenge you the next time you have a question to which you don't actually need the answer, you just want to know, leave it for a while. And if you still want to know it several hours later, go ahead and look it up. But you might find that it just kind of passes, and it doesn't matter that you didn't cram that one more piece of information into your poor, overwhelmed brain. There's a sense of spaciousness that happens when we decide that it's okay not to know, because we're so bombarded by information at all times, except when we're sleeping. And it's really helpful to have some of that spaciousness and daydreamy quality in our brains. So all of this, I barely even touched on the re-enchantment piece. I think I'll be coming back to this. I know I'll be coming back to this topic, but it really ties together because I believe that if we can cultivate more awe and wonder, we are making steps towards the re-enchantment of our lives and the way that we move on this earth. Okay, Woo Crew, that's all for today. If you liked this episode, please leave me a rating, a review. They help ever so much. Share this with your friends. Tag me on Instagram if you want to share over there. It's always appreciated. And as always, let me know if there are any topics you would like for me to drop into to discuss and how things landed for you this week. I am always happy to hear from you. That's all for now. Bye.